So today we'll be covering about alter row, asset row, and then little bit on flowlet, and we then go extensively in terms of how we can use annotations and properties. Okay, so what is alter row, right? So in real time, many cases where we keep getting the data from sources, right? So in those cases, we might have to do some alteration to get the data into our layer, right? So either it's a data lake or the staging or any layer if you want to get the data. So on based on certain conditions, right? For example, you're getting a you're getting an employee data, right? So particular department or particular employees are based on the condition. You want to either alter the data, either you want to update or you want to insert or delete. You have to do the those actions, right? It's not always you will be using the data as is dumping into your side, but based on certain conditions you have to take a logical decision whether to update, delete or insert, right? So those cases you can use a alter row transformation. It basically helps you to either update, insert, delete, update, or upset policies on rows. Right? Basically, it enforces those four policies and decides whether to update, delete, or insert. Okay, you can add one or more conditions on a single row, but based on the order of the conditions you have mentioned in the ADF, it will execute those and it will act accordingly. Okay, it's based on the order in the priority, and each row will be marked with the policy corresponding to the first row matching expression. Okay, if in case let's say there are multiple validations are one row is eligible for multiple validation, so it's based on in the order basis it will just it will just get the policy corresponding with the first row it's matching, right? So once those conditions are validated, each of the rows eligible for whether it's a, being inserted or updated or deleted or upsetted. Okay, so that's about the alter row. So when we let's deep dive into a simple scenario so that you will get more understanding. Okay. So let me open quickly idea of. So how about you guys are the free account still working or it's got expired?
It's working, sir.
It's working, right? Yeah.
How is it going to expire?
Yeah. So there is a 30 days of trial period. So after 30 days, you can't use those free subscription. So you have to upgrade to either pay as you go or you can create a new one with a different email ID.
Okay, 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 sir.
Okay. So let's add my. Okay. So let's the debug option open and let's add my source. Okay. So we'll be using the same employee source which we been using across. So this is our data set. As you can see, we have employee ID, name, salary, running salary, department, and bonus, country, gender. Okay. So now if you see, this is my input data. So now based on the department ID, I can put some validation. For example, I wanted to insert
Sir, I
only.
think your internet is slow, sir. Whatever you're showing, it is loading for us.
All right, still it's still loading
Yes, sir.
for others as well.
Now it is showing preview data.
Yeah. Okay. So now you can see the employee data set. We've been using the different exercises. Now in this exercise, this is my input data set. Now based on the departments, I wanted to take an action. For example, if department is 20, I don't want to bring the entire department 20 data as is to my uh, data lake, but I just wanted to use, if it's department 20, I just want to update the columns from the source. And if department 30, I'm not interested in department 30, just delete it. Okay. So those kind of a conditional, whether insert, update or delete, you can do using the alter row. So those conditions is applicable across the records, and it will tell you how many rows are getting inserted, how many rows are getting updated, how many rows are getting deleted or upsetted within a data set using the asset transformation. Okay. So now let's quickly add as asset here. So let me do the project here also. Let me import the project so that I can have the right schema. See, by default, if you observe, it's showing column one, column two, and all, right? So you need to import the projection so that it will uh, get the right schema, which we are having in the employee data set. And if you don't do this, those column names you cannot do it in the expressions of. We cannot use these columns in the expressions of those data transformations. Okay, so that's very important. So let the schema create and then we can go back. See, it's showing column one, column two, column two, whereas we have employee ID and all, right? So this is important. See, now it's imported. Now those column was got replaced with the actual column names. Now you can see it here. You can see the actual column names over here. Okay. So this way we are ensuring that our source is ready. Now let's create a alter row. Okay. So now when you see alter row, the incoming stream always is already came with employee. Now let's see the options. See the alter row conditions. So as discussed, insert, update, delete, and upset. Okay, and it will. You can see there is a symbol. There is a symbol before that insert. For example, if a row getting being inserted, so you can see in the data preview there is a plus symbol. If it's updated, you can see with a star, and if it's deleted, you can see with the cross, and if it's upset, is you can see both either insert or update. Okay, so these symbols will help you to tell you whether that record is getting being inserted or updated or upsetted. Okay, so now let's see that. Okay, update if. So as the condition clearly tells that update the records if for what condition. So you will enter the condition over here. Okay, so for example, let's say if department is 30, I wanted to update, right? So go to input schema, get the department ID over here and use the 30. Okay, so if the department 30, then it will update the rest of the columns. Similarly, you can add more. For example, delete if department equal to 10, or you can mention delete where salary greater than 1 lakh. Okay, so these kind of expressions you can do that. Let's just see the data preview. Now see on top, so far we didn't have any all are zeros. Now you see there are 5 records getting inserted, 5 records getting updated, and 2 records getting deleted. A total 12 records. You can see the snap of the data. It's kind of a metadata which tells you how many records getting inserted, or how many are updated, and how many get deleted. Now, if you see the symbol we were discussing, right? So we don't know whether this recording getting updated or deleted. So you can use this symbol to identify, okay, this record is getting deleted. Because we mentioned that if department is 10, just delete it. So you can see, since it's belong to department 10, it's marked as delete. And this is marked as delete. Okay. So now we also mentioned that we are given update, right? So those records where the sorry, so where we have a salary more than a lakh, we are getting deleted. So the salary is here is a more than a lakh. So this record marks as deleted. And for department 30, we mentioned that update it, right? So for, you can see the update been flagged out for department 30. All the department 30 were updated. Okay. Now what will happen? The rest of the records, the rest of the record will be inserted as is. And you can see the 20 we haven't given any condition, so it's all by default it's getting inserted. So if you don't mention anything, by default it will be insert only. But if you mention a condition over that, okay, on what condition it's getting to be inserted, or what condition is getting to be updated or deleted or upsetted, you have to specifically mention those conditions. If there is no, then by default anything by anyhow, all the idea is to insert all the records coming from the source data set. Okay, so similarly you can have more and more uh, uh, conditions. So in this case what would happen, first update will be evaluated and flagged out those records, and then after update the delete one will going to be evaluated and then flagged out. Okay, so let's see how upset works. Okay, so I hope you understand what is upset. So upset is basically we don't know whether to be upsetted, whether to be inserted or updated. Based on the conditions, the process by on the fly it decides whether the particular record being inserted or updated. It's combination of insert and update. So that's where it's called upset. Okay. So at this point, we don't know what records are going to be inserted or updated, but based on the condition, it has to be do that. Okay. Now I can give the expression, same expression over here. Now let's say so employee ID, right? So not employee ID. For example, department 10. Okay, I want to do an upset, right? So what it does is basically for the department 10, it will just compares the key column and then it does the either update or insert. Okay, so let's see how it comes. Okay, so the first condition we have given, if its salary is more than lakh, delete it. So it's doing the delete. You can see the first two records got deleted, which is department 10. Now we also gave an upset saying that if it's department 10, update it, do the upset again. Now when it's doing the when it's evaluating that upset at the last, it finds that there is no department 10 exists because it's already deleted by the earlier condition. So then what it does is it's again inserting those records. If you see, it's again uh, yeah, so it's again inserting those records with the department 10. So that is how the right. So we have given, sorry, we have given, okay, let's go back. So if it's department 10, let's do the upset we have given, right? So now in our case, in the department 10, we already deleted from the previous condition saying that these records are eligible for deleted. Now when it comes to the upset, there is no department 10 exist in our data set. So it didn't do anything. You see, there is no 10 related. Now what if I go back and change that? Let's do that. So let's say that I want to do it for 20 instead of 10. Okay, so now let's preview what will happen. You see, for 20 records, it's got upset, right? You can see both insert and both the symbols, plus as well as star. Okay, so what does it mean by upset? So it will check whether the department 20 is already exists or not. If it exists, if you see there are three records got upset. If it exists, it's going to be a it's going to be updated. If it doesn't, it's going to be recreated. Since the department 20 already exists, it just update it, right? So that's how you can apply the policies and the conditions on each row on your data set before whether it's inserting, updating, deleting, or upsetting. Okay, so asset row is the one of the highly used transformation when you're working in a real time, and it works across the rows and filters the data accordingly, and finally the final output being transition to the either sync. What are the sync destinations you will mention is going to be the destination going to be according to that. Okay, so now if I export this one, you can see the actual data. So you can export it, or you can put a sync, right? You can use a sync and put it into the destination wherever you want, whether it's a blob storage or the SQL database. You can use this data as is to get the updated information. Okay, so that's how asset will work. Sorry, alter will work. So okay, So let's move on to the next. So asset. So what is asset? Right. So as the name indicates, it enforces certain custom rules. Okay. So far, okay. Now the difference between alter and asset, you can alter the records in a manner that you want before inserting. Right. Now, in a real-time scenario, you might be dealing with a lot of input data. So you have to perform certain data quality checks before inserting or updating, right? So you want to check the quality, have the quality checks. For example, if the employee salary is greater than 1 lakh, right? Just flag it as an error, or if I'm getting a for example, in our data set we have a gender column, right? If the gender is blank, flag it as a error. All right. Or you might be dealing with a scenario where we have a salary column, right? So in the salary, if you have a, for example, let's say in the salary, instead of an integer, you got a certain rows, you got as a alphanumeric, right? So in those kind of quality checks you can perform on the input data set using the asset transformation. Okay, so basically it allows you to build a custom source inside your mapping data flow for data quality and validation. So these are the rules that you create. For example, as I mentioned, salary has to be in integer format. If it's in alphanumeric, it's not a valid record. Similarly, if a gender column is there, I would expect my process is expecting a gender column to be either male or female, right? So if the gender column doesn't have any information, it's a invalid record, right? So those kind of custom rules we can create using the quality, using the asset transformation, and these custom rules very specific to the business, right? So these are not a standard. You cannot do it in a filter or any other transformation, right? For example, the salary plus bonus, right? So if the bonus is less than 10% of salary, then flag it as an error. Okay, so this kind of a quality checks and these kind of validations is only you can, and based on your use case, and you can create those rules, custom rules using a asset transformation. Okay, so you can build those rules and determine whether values are meeting the expected output or not. Okay, and then you can check uniqueness also. Sometimes you might get a duplicate record also, right? So how do you check the duplicate records? So far we haven't. Let's say I'm getting a 1 million employee data. Now how do I check whether all the employees are a unique records I got it or not? So those kind of things you can perform using the asset. You can create a custom rules and you can use the create through asset transformation. Okay. So now once the transformation is created, so how do we validate that? So asset transformation gives you two inline functions, which is error and has error. Okay, so these two will tell you whether the particular row is good to go or it has an error. So there will be an indication you can check once the transformation runs. You can check whether these haven't any errors in this transformation. Okay, so now there are you can see there are three type of asset types. Okay, expect true, expect unique, and expect exist. Okay, so expect true is basically a boolean evaluate a boolean result. Okay, so based on the it evaluates your expectation expression and returns boolean, and if it's true, then only the record is valid. Otherwise, it will be flagged as error. Similarly, expect unique. It based on a set of a colon or expression, it will identifies whether the employee whether the data has a unique records or not. Okay, so expect exists again is a another kind of a reference option. We already discussed. For example, I have I employee data and I have a department data, right? Certain employees are not assigned to a department, valid department. For example, in our exercise we discussed, there are I think two employees, which is employee department 50. They doesn't have a valid department in department table, right? So though in those scenarios, also we are saying that these two employees are not uh, valid and they have an errors, right? Those two records are having errors, right? So those kind of validations you can do using asset types. Okay, so now let's quickly do that. Okay, so I'll be using the same data set. Let's quickly preview. See, the whole idea is ADF gives you all these options, all these transformations in a easy drag and drop way of transforming the data the way you want it, right? So the idea is to knowing all these options and choose the best one for you to pick up in your real-time use case. For example, if you ask me, the expect exist can also be done using the other transformations, right? I wanted to see whether the data is there in my employee or not. Sorry, my department ID is not, right? I can use simply using the join, right? I can do it a join, and or I can use an existing other transformation, and I can use that as well, right? But there is a special cases where you wanted to use the reference. You can check the references and flag it as an error, and then you need to do that. For example, if you see the same data set that we are using, now you see there is no data for there is no gender information for employee ID 100 runs India. Okay, now I wanted to flag this as an error. Similarly, there are two people having salary as more than some. Sometimes you got some 100,000, right? These are not a valid salaries. So you want to create a custom rule, say that, and flag it out as an error for these scenarios. Okay, so now in this example, let's say I want to gender. Okay, so if the gender is null, I wanted to uh, flag it as an error. Okay, so let's do that. So now go back and add asset. So now as soon as you create an asset, you need to create the custom rules, right? So you can see these are the rules you can asset on the data set. For example, as we discussed, you can see expected true, and expect unique, and expect exist. Okay, expect exist will come if you add another data stream, because for expect exist you need two data streams. You cannot validate expect exist with one. All right. So expect true. Let's do that expect true, and I can create a since it's a rule based. I can keep a given number. For example, uh, uh, gender rule number one. right? You can give a description also. For example, you know what is gender rule number one. You, as per the business, you know that. But but for the third party guy to understand, it's always better to give a description. For example, uh, uh, ensure gender column is not null, right? So this is a rule, and this is a rule description. So what we're doing is the rule number one says that ensure the gender column is not null. Okay, so now in the filter, if you have anything to filter, you can add, but it's an optional. And finally, expression, this is a mandatory. So this expression going to be evaluated based on your asset type, and then accordingly those records getting flagged whether they have an error or they don't have any error. Now let's see the open the builder. So what was my uh, expression value? I want to ensure so is null, right? So is null gender. So now what it gives you, if you see is null any boolean, it returns a boolean, checks if the value is null. Okay, so now if for example we have a one employee where we don't have a gender information. So now what are is going to return? It's going to return true, right? So let's go back and see. Now go to data preview. You see, except the Cynthia, which doesn't have any, all the records flagged as error. You see, all the 10 records got flagged as error, right? Why? Because you need to understand one thing over here. And let's go back. So now, see, this is expected true, right? So since the expression is null, if the gender is not null, if it's a null, it will return true, and if it's not null, it's returns a false, right? So in case of where we have a gender value as not null, it should return false, right? So what we will do is we will put an exclamator just before the is null operation. So what it does is it makes true to not true, true, sorry, true to false, and false to true. For example, let's say Cynthia. If I pass a Cynthia, um, it will gives you it will gives you null, right? See, check if the value is null. If the value is null, it will gives you boolean true. But if it's a true, then your expression is always become a true, so it's not considering. So if it's a true, you need to make it a false, right? So that is where the exclamator will work. Exclamator is basing, it's a opposite, not in and not, true and false. So those situations you can use exclamatory before that expression. And now if you see, now if you run, now you see all the records are being inserted, but there are only two records where the gender is null. Those two records got flagged as error. You can see the cross mark over here. Now let's say you want to put a flag as well, right? So what you can do, you can create a derived column, and you can mention as error. You remember it gives you a inline function, right? So what I will do is I will use the inline function is error. See, okay, so now let's do the see the derived column being added as error. Now you see whether it indicates whether this record has an error or no. Now you see the two records which we flagged out an error is it indicates a check with the saying that yes, this record is error, this record is error. So you can use this export and you can export this to a export to CSV and you can send back to your business saying that out of 12 records, there are two records got an errors and they can fix that back and they can again send to a proper uh, proper file to you so that you can reload again. So that is the purpose of having this error function. Okay, so so now why I use I just want to spend a minute on why I use exclamator character, right? So normally in how it works is, for example, if a salary equal to 10,000, right? So now what if I want to do salary not equal to 10,000? You can do it in two ways: salary not equal to 10,000, or you can also write salary 10,000 and you can put a exclamator here. So this is also sorry, not here, here. So these two are equal now. Either use your this operator to not 10,000, or you can just put a exclamator in front of equal and it will be created as a not equal to 10,000. Okay. Similarly, the same expression we used here as well. Right. So I don't want return all the if it's a null, not null, right? If it's a null, it will be true. It's becoming true. But I want to make it a false, so I just use the exclamator character before that. So it's become a false, then this flag it as an error. Okay, so that's how you can use an asset operator to have all the checks, right? So you can have anything like, let's say, unique. You want to make sure the data is unique, right? So you can add more and more. You can have more and more conditions as well. You can see, let's say I want to add unique. Uh, product, I can create a unique rule number 2, right? So what is the unique I want to do? Ensure employee ID is unique. Okay, so now you need to select the column that you are enforcing the uniqueness. Okay, so which column you are expecting unique? You can see the name, ID, which column. Based on that, it will identify those unique and it will give you. For example, normally an ID, so I can select employee ID. So it may ensure that employee ID is unique. Otherwise, uh, it will be flagged as an error. Okay, so this is how you can enforce the custom validations and the create a custom rules which are very unique to your real-time business case, right? For example, you are dealing with the finance data, right? So in that case, you always wanted to perform different rules. If you're dealing with the banking kind of a transactions, you have a business rules, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, rule 4, right? So those kind of a logic you can mention using the asset operation, and then you can create those rules and you have the expressions. Now one thing here, you can see the building, you can also have your own function, right? So if you see the expression builder, it will give you functions that is already pre-built, right? And which we already discussed. And also on the input schema also, you can do a create expressions on your own, right? You can parameterize. And another beauty is you can create your own functions. You see data flow library functions, right? So you can create your own functions as well. If the situation demands to create your own function and then upload to library, of course we'll be discussing this in our future class. So those library functions are your own user defined functions you can create and you can use it in here. Okay, so that's how you can take advantage of this builder. And you can have those expressions over here and then use them to validate the data, because data quality is one of the major area in data analytics, particularly big data analytics. We don't want to use the income. We don't want to believe or trust the input data as is. Rather we want to do our own validations and put our own rules and ensuring the data is consistent across the uh, different streams, and it makes sense for our use case as well. Okay, so that's about asset and alert row. So with this, I think we are mostly completed all the transformations. So we discussed about input output transformation. How do you do that? We discussed about schema modifiers. We discussed about formatters using the different JSON structures. We discussed about row modifiers as well. Now the final one in this list is only left with Flowlet. So what is Flowlet? Okay, so let's quickly do that. So a Flowlet is basically a reusable container of activities that can be created from an existing data map flow or from the scratch. Okay, so now think of what is a reusable container. So for example, if you see, so far we've been creating different transformations and all, right? So we are selecting the same employee data set. We are checking whether the all the employees are there in department or not, and we are flagging. We are doing so many things, right? So now what if I want to reuse those transformations in my next project or next use case or the next scenario? Because I don't want to create the same thing again and again and fill with my multiple data flows. right? For example, the same one for the same one just we discussed about identifying a unique record, right? Let's assume that I wanted to I don't want to get the unique data to my analytic use case. I want to filter the duplicate data before it creates. So we just created a custom rule. We have created a rules, right? If you remember the rules we created just before, you see rule number one, rule number two. I wanted to utilize this rule number and rule two in a every use case. I want to use this. For example, any employee that I'm getting, I want to ensure the gender is not null and also ensure the employees are unique, right? And you might be getting the data from your employee data. You might be getting from peoples of, or you might be getting let's say Darwin, right? Your organization using Darwin and or some any SaaS based applications. And let's assume that you're also getting from Salesforce and you're also getting from Oracle HCM. Okay, so now you are getting all these data sets. Okay, so now for any employees, the rule number one is from the business is ensure the gender is valid and not null. And rule number two says that ensure uh, employee ID uniqueness. Right. So this is the standard across all these data sets. Right. Today you're getting, tomorrow it could be even more sources. Right. Irrespective of that, you have to do these business validations for all those data sets. So what are you going to do? Are you going to create for each one? Are you going to create a different data flows? So for example, you create a data flow one here, and then for Darwin, you are again creating a data flow two. And for Salesforce data, you're again creating another data flow three, and for Oracle, you're again creating another data flow four. Right, so you'll be having bunch of data flows for to deal with each of the source data sets. Now that is not the ideal way of managing the software development. That we wanted to reuse, we wanted to reuse as much as possible so that we can reduce the maintenance, right? Let's say tomorrow there is a rule got changed over here, right? So you wanted to add a new rule, or there is some change in the rule in here, right? So what do? You cannot go back each of these data flows and modify and test it and ensure it's working fine. You cannot have that luxury of time, right? Organizations expect change in one place and just let it be reflect in all the places wherever you're using, right? So those scenarios is where what the data flow flowlet will help you. So it's basically a reusable component container, right? So you can create a flowlet. So instead of directly creating a data flow, you can create a flowlet on the same. Okay, and you can call that flowlet across your data flows and just pass the input and output. Okay, so that's a this is not a transformation. Basically, it's not a transformation, right? That's where if you see flowlet is not part of any transformation. It's not about your Data is not about your functions, schema modifier, anything. It's a concept where you can use this. For example, this is the only we created, right? We can create a flowlet from this and we can use it as well. For example, if you see when you create, you can add a source or add a flowlet. Okay, I want to create add a flowlet. This is what this has to be a flowlet. You can select the flowlet over here. Right? And then I can use this when any employee data is getting, I just pass the data set and I can use this as a source, and I can the same rules, the same validations can be reused across the data sets. Okay, and that's the purpose of this. Now you can create a new flowlet from the scratch, or you can if an existing mapping getting used in again and again, you can convert them into a flowlet and then you reuse them into multiple data flows. Another example could be, for example, you want to clean the address, right? So employee address, let's say in the same example, right? So rule number 3 is about address should be address 1, address 2, city and country. In this format you're expecting, right? Or somebody sends, let's say PeopleSoft, they send address 1, but they didn't send country address. They clubbed up everything into same address 1. For example, number 66, right? Number 66, Market Road, Bangalore. So they send address in this folder. Ideally, this is your address and this is city. This should go with the city, not with the address 1. But they sent everything in same within address only. Or somebody in address 2, right? He sent the Bangalore, India. These kind of situations can happen in the real time. You can't expect 100% to other guy. But if he's not under, whether we are not bothered whether he's 100% true or no, but we are going to do all these validations when we wanted to do before it comes. Okay, so you can create a rule and just pass those data sets, that's it. And automatically Flowlet deals with them and do the transformations, and if it's an error it will flag it out, and if it doesn't it will go and it will create those records. If they are not fitting into the validation, the asset will flag it as an error, and at the end of the day how many records got error and how many records got success, and then you can insert create accordingly. Okay, so that's the beauty of having a flowlet. Now I want you to think about this scenario. Maybe if you're in a real time, you're working in a project and all, where you can be reusing already your transformations already, where that can be reused and create a container as a flowlet, and then that can be reused across the different data sets. Okay, so think about the situation and scenario, and we will discuss in our further class how that can be achieved using the flowlet. It's basically a designing concept. It's not a it's not a transformation or anything. It's a designing concept that Azure Data Factory provides, so that you can reuse the logic across your use cases and no need to create so many data flows for each of the data set, and it's become a cumbersome to manage in future, right? So think of those scenario where can be it can be reused, right? I can give another example. For example, payroll, right? Payroll data also same thing. You could be getting the payroll data from your multiple sources of your organization. For example, your organization in Europe, they might be using some payroll system. They in US, they might be using some payroll system. Canada, they might be using some payroll system. So at the end of the day, all this consolidation happening in India. So you will be getting the data from multiple sources, right? And you need to provide the payroll accordingly. For example, US follows different payroll process, Europe follows different, and Indian employees got a different. For example, um, there are local rules, right? So those kind of rules, and they can apply over it here using the flowlet, and some of them could be common across, right? So you need not to spend time to writing the same transformation, same stuff again and again. Rather, you can reuse those using the flowlet, right? And it could be sales data as well, right? So think about the scenario and try using your free account, and we can see how this can be designed, and what are the challenges you face, and how as I said, it's a design concept. It's not a logical, or it's not a technical or anything. It's a designing concept, how we are going to design your data flow. Okay, think about that, and we can discuss further in further classes if you have any challenges or questions. But I want you to try this, right? Because this is a culmination of across all these things, right? So you basically bundle all these transformations, modifiers, everything into a one package, and that package has to be reused across your other use cases using the flowlet. This package basically packaging everything. Okay, so that's the exercise for you guys. Okay, so think about that and come up with a scenario. See, I have given two examples, but I want to hear from you in the real time scenario if you have any such cases. Okay, so don't worry, we will discuss and we will design accordingly if you are if you have any problems, but come up with that scenario or situation where you want to use flowlet, and create a package, and that can be used across your organization. That it could be any. It's in healthcare also we can do that. In financial data, if you're doing healthcare data or retail data, any data that could be any in the industry or practice you've been part of, you can bring up that scenario. All right. So and the final one, sync, we know already is the same sync we've been discussing and using in our copy activity. The same sync over here. Yeah. Okay. So finally, you have an input and you do the transformation. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I got some Zoom message. I don't know. Okay. So now you do the source, and you do the all the transformation. Finally, you use the sync to copy the data into destination. That is the same thing that we were talking about in our copy. We use that, right? The same thing, you need to just select the data set and destination. The data going to be moved over there. Okay. So with that, I think we completed all that data flow transformations, and we are let me go back. Okay, and we know. So far, we know we discussed about the pipeline, the the foundational building blocks of ADF using the pipelines, and we discussed about different activities, how you deal with the different scenarios, how you deal with the different sources if the files comes, and how do you process multiple files, single files, and all the stuff we already. The different activities available in ADF we discussed, and once the file comes, how to play with the data, right? You need to create the transformation. You cannot use as is the data, right? So using the mapping data flow, how we can modify and transform the data in a manner that you wanted, your business wanted, using the mapping data flows. Okay, so these are the, again, these are the plain vanilla of any ETL, right? So you know how to extract, right? Let me go back. You know ETL, what is ETL? Extract, right? You know how to connect, you know how to connect, and you know how to get the data and put it into a staging and put it into a blob storage. And if you have one file, how to do that. If you have multiple files, how to do that. If you, and how you can parameterize those stuff using the parameterization options, and what is data set, what is link service, and within that, how do you can do the parameterize to minimize the creation of multiple data sets and all. We discussed that. All right. Now, once the that comes, the file comes to our blob storage. What are we going to do? We need to process the data. We need to transform the data. That is where the transformations come into transform, right? Using mapping data flow, and this extraction using activities, pipeline activities, and we are using mapping data flow to transform the data. And finally, we're loading the data. Finally, we're loading data using pipeline, right? So these all, everything is we are packaging into a pipeline, and then using that pipeline to load the data into our destination, right? That is what it's called an ETL: extract, transformation, and load. Now, um, and what is Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based ETL service. You remember that we at the beginning we discussed it's a cloud-based ETL service for big data analytics. Okay, so now in further classes there are few more things we need to discuss. Okay, that's about not about the files, not about the extraction transformation, but overall as a packaging, right? How do you package and how do you maintain these data factories, right? And those stuff we'll be discussing in our next classes. Now I'll quickly discuss the remaining topics that I'm planning to cover. So change data capture. Have you heard of change data capture? Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah. So change data capture is as the same example, right? We earlier we discussed the employee data. You're getting employee data daily, so you need not get the data as is daily, right? So you can create a change data capture scenario to identify the records that are either inserted or updated or modified comparing to the previous day, right? For example, you are getting a million records. Out of that, only daily you are getting a million records. So you don't need to process the million records daily, because only there is certain amount of the, maybe a few hundreds of records got modified comparing to the yesterday, right? So you don't want to mesh your compute and the storage to process all the million records daily. So there is a way to identify the change data capture. Sorry, there is a way to identify the data that's been changed compared to the last run, and you can only deal with those 100 records, whatever it may be, and you can process them. Okay, that's a good concept. It very well it's required in real time. Okay, and also we'll be discussing about nested of activities. There is a concept of master and child pipeline. So I create a master pipeline, and I underneath I create a multiple child pipelines. Okay, and there is a dependency between these two, right? So how do we create the dependency, and how do we create a master child pipeline? We will those concepts also we will be discussing. And the global parameters, right? We know parameters to create a parameterize at link service level, data set level, and also pipe level. Now, what is this global parameters? Okay, we will discuss that as well. And properties of pipeline, I think we touched upon in our previous class, but again, we will at a high level, we'll see what are the properties of pipeline and how that can help in terms of monitoring the pipeline when you run in an enterprise. And finally, GitHub. Have you heard of anybody GitHub?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Just
how do we integrate ADF into GitHub? Because
no
so far,
idea.
yeah. So that's going to be so far we've been doing it locally. For example, if I'm doing this one, only I can only see this one. Either of you can take and can take a look of this, and I cannot share with you. Let's say some of you ask, can you share this pipeline to me? I cannot share with you because you and me have not collaborated using GitHub, right?